right, we're back to talk about Patriots. Everybody knows that's what's on the mind right now. Heading into Sunday, we've got the game coming up against the Vikings. So, Mike, what do you got for us?
Well, I think before we go into the Vikings game, let's talk about a little bit about last week. It's about the San Diego game. The Patriots won, 23-0 in a game that, they really didn't lock down till the end of the game. Chargers missed a field goal, and we managed to squeak it out. So we're going to go over a little bit about that. So we have some guests with us. We have Brian Mahler, and we have Phil Daré. They're our guests. We're going to talk about some Patriots. First off, should we be concerned that the Patriots didn't put an end to the Chargers sooner in this game? The fact that they let it get down a little too close to the end?
I think that as far as the Chargers go, I know they're only 2-4, 2-5 now. But they have the number one offense. They have the number one defense. They have the number one passing defense. So I think considering a team that's pretty pass heavy, we don't have much of a running game as in comparison to a lot of the AFC teams at the top. Pittsburgh, Ravens. They've got some good runners. Ben Jarvis holds his own. Danny Woodhead holds his own. But I definitely think that there's less to be concerned about when you consider the fact that this was going to automatically be a tough game for us. The fact that we were so far ahead all the way through those first three quarters, I don't know. What do you guys think?
Well, they could have been further ahead because the Chargers basically were handing them that game with stupid turnovers, unforced errors, if you will, early in that game when a receiver goes down without being touched and just gets up, leaving the ball on the field.
That was great, wasn't it?
Yeah.
No, things like that.
Yeah, big mistakes, big coaching mistakes. That's definitely. Yeah, we left some things that could have been turned into more points. There was a time at when the half was over, the first half was over, where you thought we should be up by at least 30. But at the same time, this is still a young defense. It's a young offense on a lot of perspectives that we weren't expecting. We lost our veteran Kevin Falk. We've got somebody like Danny Woodhead coming in. I just think that there's a lot of places where we could have made mistakes where we didn't. And when you're the team that's making less mistakes, I think automatically you've got a heads up. And we have that we had no turnovers in that game, and that's a big deal. And it's a bit even if you go back to that very last play where they went to kick the 45-yard field goal. Our defense stayed really strong. They stayed strong. They forced that false start, and 5 yards later they missed a field goal. I think that's on our team too.
A lot needs to be said about that defense too, because that was the question going into this season. And the last 3 weeks, really, they've stepped up a lot and done a lot of unexpected things so far. And they basically kept them in the game last week. And in the Ravens game, they did a great job. So they're coming of age a little bit, and that's definitely a good point.
Agreed.
Now, out of everything you saw, out of the offense, out of the defense, special teams, what do you guys think is the difference maker of this team? Like, who are some of the players that you think are going to make the difference in this year's Patriots team?
Tom Brady, without a doubt, is always a difference maker, and Vince Wilfork, I think, is really the anchor now on the defense. I think that's the guy that the defense needs to center around and get energy off of, and he's the leader of that defense right now. It's a young group, and he is now the elder statesman of the group, and I think he's really the main guy.
I also think Gerard Mayo should play a big role in that defense too, because yes, Vince Wilfork's been there and he's definitely the leader of that defense, but Mayo's got to step up. He's part of a linebacking core that's replacing an elite linebacking. Like the Patriots were based on they ran that 3-4 because they had 4 very good linebackers, and they were just prowling around, making great tackles, great plays. So he's got to start stepping up and make plays, which he has been, but I think a lot's going to be on his shoulders too.
I agree. He hasn't really stood out and done a lot of exclusively incredible plays, but he's been steady, and he has been an anchor back there in those linebackers.
Well, he's definitely been steady enough to be leading the entire NFL in tackles. So I would say that he's definitely already stepped up as far as I'm concerned. He's still only in his fourth year. He's not, he hasn't been there as long as Vince Wilfork, but I definitely think he's a huge part of it. And I also think you can't overlook Steven Gostkowski. He has been huge for this team ever since he came in 2006. He's basically been the underrated, you know. He came after Adam Vinatieri, and nobody, you know, he doesn't have the big kicks, but he had that big kick to win the game against the Ravens, and he's number 2 for all kickers in the NFL right now. He's got great numbers, and he's really reliable. I mean, the guy has, I think, a career kicking percentage of like 83%, something like that. So he's definitely somebody that's always there when you need him in a pinch, and he's somebody that can win a game for us in overtime, and that's huge.
I agree with that. I think that's a very key thing, that the special teams this year is going to be something that they really need. There's not going to be any more blowouts. I think these are going to be pretty tight games, and it could easily come down to 3 points, and he's the one that's going to get it.
Yeah.
It easily could come down to 1 point. And
The last 2
he's
weeks
a sure
it came
thing.
down to 3, yeah.
Yep.
Absolutely.
I mean, speaking of 3 points and 1 point, I mean, what does it say about the resilience of this team in the past 2 weeks? Yes?
Call on.
All right, I think we have a call on line.
Caller, yay!
Wow. So we'll stop what I was just saying, and we'll go to a call.
that was
Excellent. Let's see, how do we do this?
Hit speaker and then line
Speaker. Hello, caller. Good, how are you? Let me see if I can turn you up here. What's your name?
Bob.
It's Bob. And where are you calling from, Bob?
I'm from Riverdale.
Riverdale, okay. I don't know much about Riverdale. How's Riverdale these days?
I can see the river.
Okay, well, that's all that matters, I guess.
Good.
So what are you calling to talk about?
Hey, I have a question to ask you. How
Yeah.
far do you think the Patriots will go?
I think, you know, right now it's hard to tell. I think there's more parity in the NFL than I've seen in a really long time. But I have to say that if they can beat the Ravens, and they can, I think a big test is going to be our game against the Steelers. And I think after that I'll have a better idea. I don't see them having any problem getting into the playoffs. I think they're going to be really good down the stretch. I think the Jets have started out strong, but they've got a lot of they have a team that's still got a lot to do and to prove. And I'm not ready to jump on that bandwagon quite yet. So I see us winning the division.
Yeah, but everyone can beat the Ravens.
You think anyone can beat the Ravens?
Yeah, I can beat the Ravens.
I think I can beat the Ravens.
I feel like there's been some people that haven't beat the Ravens yet, though.
I haven't, but I can.
No, but
Just saying.
Now, what do you think about the whole Randy Moss thing?
What do you have anything about the Randy Moss thing? I know Brian's got a lot to say about Randy Moss.
Well,
Go ahead, Joe.
I think right now it wasn't a good deal. I think right now it's on 3rd and long, you're seeing them struggle trying to convert for first downs. And that's a product of not having Randy Moss and having a lot of smaller receivers that can't go up and get a ball against their defensive corners.
Can I cut you off there for a second? But Randy Moss likes to think he's a great man. If Randy Moss wants to catch the ball, Randy Moss will catch the ball. Last past couple of games, Randy Moss wasn't catching the ball. He's been dropping balls. He was jogging to the end zone. I mean, Randy Moss, if he wants to catch the ball, he'll catch the ball. And he's not doing that great where he is right now either. I mean,
But a lot needs to be said about what he did for that offense. Even if he wasn't thrown to, he was getting a lot of space
of course,
for Wes Welker.
But, think about Randy Moss. The 07 year made him really big. Made him who he is.
All right, well, thank you so much for your call, Bob. You're a first caller. You're definitely a big deal for the show, so we appreciate you calling in. Good
Round of
insight.
I mean, I think to reiterate on the Randy Moss thing, I think the fact that, he's just not on the field is a big deal, regardless. Yep. And I do also think as long as somebody goes out there and gets double teamed, whether it be Deion Branch or anybody, I mean, I think they're doing the job and somebody else is going to be open. And, you just don't have that deep threat right now. He's the best deep ball catcher in the league. He just, Yeah. So that 3rd down is a tough situation. So as I was saying before Bob interrupted us.
Bob didn't.
No, I'm just kidding.
Bob was the most exciting thing that's happened so far.
Bob, I'm just kidding. I mean, me and you I'm just joking. As I was saying before our wonderful call from Bob, is that, with these last 2 games were such a close, were both close games, what does it say about the resiliency of this team? The fact that, they can pull out these close games. It reminds me of, 8-10 years ago where they were just,
it reminds me, it reminds me of 03, really, the 03-04, that Super Bowl we won. I mean, we weren't dominant that year. We went 14-2, but we were winning tight games. We were winning games by field goals. We were winning games dirty. We weren't winning games beautiful. It wasn't 07 throwing 50 touchdown passes. But that's what this reminds me of. I mean, I'm definitely not going to say we're going to get to the Super Bowl. I know Bob asked how far we're going to get. I think that we have a playoff caliber team. I absolutely do, and I don't think that there's any reason to believe otherwise at this point, especially based on the track record of this team. But I think it's reminiscent of that team.
I think it definitely comes down to the defense, though, because in those years, the only time that they won a Super Bowl when they weren't ranked first or second defensively was the first Super Bowl they won where they were 6th. So, I mean, a lot has to go on that defense. And, I mean, they're stepping up recently, so if they continue that, then they definitely have a shot.
Yeah, it's still a work in progress, that defense. There's so many young people on that defense. It's going to come down to if they can mesh together with the veterans and come together as a team. And right now, I think what they're doing is they're finding a way to win, especially on the road. Like those two victories on the road, regardless of how they got them, it's a W in the column.
Huge.
And that's big. That's a big confidence builder for the team, and especially that defense.
And that's resiliency. So I would say that's the best you can ask for out of this team at this point, definitely.
No, it's great. And we all know what happens this week in Foxborough. Brett Favre comes to Foxborough, right? And
Something about Brett.
And more importantly, Randy Moss comes back to Foxborough. It seems a little too soon for the whole hype to happen with Randy Moss, but it's only been a couple weeks. And first, before we talk about Randy Moss again, we have Brett Favre to deal with. And first of all, who do we want? Do we want Brett Favre or do we want Jackson?
I want
who
Brett.
Do we really want to see?
I want Brett.
I think we all emotionally want Brett.
Everyone
I think
wants Brett.
anybody, I think anybody who wants to see they just want to see it for the show. They want to see everything that's going to happen with this guy and his heel and his arm and throwing the guns, and is he going to be able to hit Ronnie Moss, and is anybody going to be able to cover him? I mean, obviously he's going to be the one that's going to give you the better show. But I am going to go out on a limb and say that if you're the Patriots, you definitely don't want Brett Favre in for this game. I think Tavares Jackson is going to be an easier quarterback to defend. He doesn't have the long ball. He's not going to get it to Randy Moss. Granted, Brett Favre hasn't been getting it to Randy Moss either, but he has the capabilities to do it. And I think that, we have definitely been recently, we're hard on Brett and we're hard on, he's old and he's getting to the point where he's definitely not the kind of player that everybody's saying he is. But he's definitely also not a guy that can't sling it into the end zone. And with the kind of secondary that we have, I just don't think you want to stretch the field that far. I think that you're better off keeping it tight and being able to use some of those safeties closer to the quarterback. I just don't think if you're asking for that, that it's a very good strategy for the Pats. I definitely think Bill Belichick is hoping that Tavares Jackson's in this Sunday.
I think that Brett Favre is a lame duck, and I think he has issues with his where he's throwing the ball. He's thrown too many dumb interceptions lately, and I would much rather take a guy that is gimpy and throws bad interceptions than a guy that's probably on the ball right now and physically healthy.
And Jackson is a much more mobile quarterback than Brett Favre is. And their
but we have
offensive line,
no problem at linebacker.
But their offensive line hasn't been great. And keep in mind, they have Adrian Peterson back there too.
That's why I'm saying keep the field short. Don't be stretching out with Randy Moss and Brett Favre and his big arm, because we're gonna have to stop Adrian Peterson, and I can't imagine how that's gonna go when you've got somebody trying to cover Randy Moss in the backfield.
Well, I think it also could be tough on play actions. They can have Jackson roll out too, and obviously young defenders are gonna commit to Adrian Peterson. I mean, old defenders are gonna commit to Adrian Peterson, but if they have a play fake and they have Jackson rolling out, they can do a lot of damage, especially with Randy Moss going deep, because that's going to buy Jackson a whole lot more time, because gimpy Brett Favre's not going to be limping around the backfield getting sacked.
Listen, hey, I'd love to say Brett Favre is nothing but a gimp, but I still think he's got an arm on him one way or another. So
I think we should make a bet.
We're going to make a bet?
Who's on Team Favre here?
As far as who?
You are. You want Favre over Jackson.
No, I don't want him. I don't want him at all. I don't know. I'm just saying that if you're the Patriots, I think you'd rather have Tavares Jackson on the field.
Right. I'd rather have Favre.
Okay.
If you're the Patriots.
I mean, if I'm the Patriots, yeah, he's looked awful. He's old. I mean, out of Foxborough this week, in case you guys didn't see it, we are doing the throwback helmets. It's the throwback helmets.
Ooh, throwback helmet week.
Throwback helmet week with the
Tripod
red
Ted.
jerseys, and we're doing it, I think, for Brett Favre, because he's the only player in the league that was in the league when they had the throwback helmets.
I think
That's
he wore
true.
a leather helmet, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think he was a
He might have had a
leatherhead.
leatherhead guy. So, yeah, I take Favre all day in this situation, and we know he's going to play because he has his little streak, and he'll crawl onto the field if he can. We're going to see Favre.
So